Hey, how you all doing? It's Barry with Growing Roots Farm. I've got a kind of an answer to a question we had posed on one of our comments, which is, what is rotational grazing? I think that varies from person to person, which can be some of the confusion around it. In our instance, we're doing it a little bit more. You might hear the term called mob grazing. That might be a little bit better indicator of how we are doing it, even though our flock is not very populated yet. We're just getting started. We've had sheep now for a year, but we do this same technique, albeit it's not with the same type of fencing as I have down here behind me. But we do the same principles on the rest of our property with our other animals, such as our pigs, our goats, even our chickens are rotationally grazed. So let me explain it just a little bit. If you see out here, I'll just zoom in. We got our sheep there. I just moved them over, okay? And you can make out, you see a reel there, a reel there, okay? That's where our lines, that's where our dividers are. That's our paddock for this section. Let me back it up. That's our paddock for this section. These paddocks here are close to 1/10 of an acre. Not quite, but close. Keep in mind, there's only 7 ewes in this. When we rotate them every 2 days. So basically what we want them to do, let me show you here with this grass. We want them to eat the tops, like the top third, and then leave the bottom 2/3 to continue its growth. You can see this is the direction we're going. This is pretty good ground right here. This used to be an old tobacco bottom. We are in Kentucky, so tobacco used to be very prevalent. But we came from back there. We worked back through around that thicket, and now we're coming back this way, and we'll be heading out in there and then looping back around. So this ground here's had close to 60 days since the sheep have been on it. So our sheep touch the ground for 2 days. You know, they've got all their manure and everything goes on that ground. They eat it down. It gets worked up, and then they move. We don't keep them in one big paddock. This section over here would have been, right at about 20 to 30 days ago. Something like that. And it looks a little bit different. You can see the mower in the background. We had, when we moved into this property, this bottom, kind of from here over towards our driveway was very heavy in ironweed, very heavy. We've got some of it in this paddock, although it's kind of getting out. You got it right here. It gets that tall purple buds, purple blooms. They will eat some of it, but that's not a plant that they necessarily desire. And we want to get rid of that ironweed. So what we've been doing, you can kind of see back here, we're not going to do this all the time, but as we've moved the sheep, we've been back mowing. And we've been trying to do that in an effort to reduce all the ironweed on this property. If it weren't for the ironweed, I don't think we would do it. The reason why you want to keep, there's a bunch of different reasons why rotational grazing is beneficial. I can explain it, but I'm not nearly as eloquent as somebody as, say, Greg Judy from his channel. He's done years of conversation on rotational grazing, and that's where we've tried learning a lot of our principles from, is his management techniques, along with Joel Salton's, aka the Polyface Farms. We try to incorporate a lot of their livestock management principles into our farm, it just was appealing. That's not, that's not the way that we grew up raising animals. My wife and I both grew up on cattle farms. We didn't really grow up doing it that way. We had the larger, 20, 30, 40 acre sections that they could go in. They stayed there for a certain amount of time, a couple weeks or whatnot, and then they moved to the next one. Different management styles, and you have to find what works best for you. The advantage to this is one of the reasons why we did it. Let me back up a little bit. One of the reasons why we did it, not so much down here. Down here is pretty decent soil. Down here on this bottom, we're at the bottom. You get the creek back there behind me. This is our bottom. This is our flat. But up on top of our hill, we don't have a whole lot of topsoil. Our ground is a very heavy clay base with a lot of rock, and I mean really dense, hard rock to cut through, hard rock to move. So what we wanted to do is, incorporating this method, it will help build up your soil, which is one of the ways we did it, or one of the reasons why we've chosen this method. Is for the soil and for the grasses, because also the hay fields, when we moved in, the hay fields really hadn't had any attention, and it was just primarily a lot of weeds. So we are trying to combat that by improving our soil, improving our grasses through rotational grazing. You get more benefit if you do your techniques right with that. You get more benefits to the soil and the grasses with rotational grazing or mob grazing than you do with traditional open pasture. Just let the animals go. They eat it down. The grass doesn't cover a lot. The sun comes down, it bakes the dirt. The microorganisms in the ground, the microbial life, does not survive as well. It does a lot better when you're able to leave a thicket of grass, a taller structure, which is why I really wouldn't want to back mow. I'd rather just leave it standing wherever it's standing at whatever height. Actually, let me show you. I just moved them, just moved the lambs, moved the sheep from one paddock. So let me show you what they leave it like. And if it weren't for the ironweed, we wouldn't bother back mowing. So this is what it's at, and this is it's up to my knee, some of that, but some of the grasses aren't the best. But you're looking at the grass here, a lot of it is still about a foot tall, roughly 8 inches, a foot tall, some of it taller than that. So what it's doing is it's allowing the microorganisms within the soil to kind of flourish, which is what we want. You can see where we mowed with the mower deck at the highest setting, but I'd still not like to have it mowed down like that, not for this type of rotational grazing. I'd rather leave it at this, let it regrow, and just continue that cycle. Okay, I hope that came across well on the video. One of the other big advantages, if we manage our rotations correctly, by the time we go into winter, we should have a pretty good stand of grass left going into winter. I know last winter was our first winter with sheep, and I was pleasantly surprised. They really didn't eat very much hay at all. They ate less hay in the entire winter than a handful of cattle would have eaten in a day or 2 days. I was completely shocked at how little hay they would eat. They would leave the hay alone. Even if we had a light snow or a really heavy frost, they would paw through the ground, paw through that snow, and eat what was there instead of eating the hay. Now, they would go to the hay initially, but they always stopped once they got through like the clover or the alfalfa part of the hay. they always left it. They never continued with that. So being a first-time sheep farmer, I was shocked, especially having grown up with cattle. I did not realize how little hay they would go through. So if we leave them over the winter with a good stand of grasses, then that cuts down our expenses on hay. So rotational grazing, you don't have to do as much hay. And actually, a lot of people that do this method, if you watch others on YouTube, a lot of them don't even have hay baling equipment. We don't. We have family that do, that we could borrow if we wanted to, but we don't bale any hay. If we're going to get any hay, we'll buy it or get it off of some family. But it's not enough that we're going to go out and buy our own equipment and get everything for us. So that's a big advantage. That's a huge cost savings when you don't have to do as much hay. And I know the nutrients aren't as dense in the winter, but they did really well over the winter. They weren't losing weight. They looked fine. They did really well last year. Although I will say, a caveat to that, it was a very mild winter. So I'll kind of hold off on that until we have a really heavy, really cold, heavy snow winter, because that we haven't had here yet with the sheep. But anyway, that's some of the rotational grazing. What is it? We are moving them kind of in a mob grazing technique. Compact, small area, let them hit that area for 2 days and then move to the next. Give that area, preferably for the parasite control, you want to give it about 45 days. 45 days or longer. We're getting it closer to 60 days on average. So, and the other thing with this technique, as we get more livestock, as we get more sheep, instead of doing a paddock that's just this, a tenth of an acre, with the reels and the way it's set up down here, we can make the paddocks however large we need to make them, and it really doesn't add to our work. That really doesn't change anything in the workflow process or the time it takes to do all this. So that's some of the ideas behind rotational grazing. It takes me about 15-20 minutes on days that I move them. And the majority of that is not even moving the line. The majority of it is moving their shade structures and their water. It takes me longer to do that than it does to move the line. But about 15 minutes total, that's all it takes. About 15 to 20 minutes every other day is the time I'm actually working with them. I try to check on them every single day, obviously. But that's the actual work time involved now that we have this set up down here. It is very different with our animals up on top of the hill where we have the electrified netting. That's more labor intensive and takes more time. Hopefully we'll get that system changed over to like we have here with the reels, but that is having to build fencing up on top of the hill that we don't currently have. So one day we'll get there, but right now, for down here on the flat with the sheep, this method, this technique works fantastic. I couldn't be happier with it. Just waiting, kind of being patient, trying to grow our flock organically, I guess. We're not going out and buying 20 or 30 head of ewes. We started with just a few, and we're just going to keep adding. I mean, I am tempted to buy somebody else's flock and just add to it immediately. It is very tempting. There's reasons to do that, but we have not done that as of yet. Anyway, thank you all. Thanks for watching. If you've watched all this time, please give me a like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification button. Thank you very much. See you all next time.